vehicles or bodies that we're dwelling in. And some of us have female bodies and some of us have male bodies. And so my understanding is that we want to somehow discuss something about the interactions of the different genders and some things that can facilitate more smooth interactions. But I think it's important to remember that premise that we are actually spirit souls in certain designated bodies, that we're trying to manage that situation.
Does anybody have a question?
I wanted to discuss about, I think I shared this yesterday as well. Sometimes it's seen that when a man kind of wants to talk to someone of an opposite gender, they kind of talk to them as if they're talking to their male friend, which is very direct and very on the point. So that may not land very well for the female. And sometimes when female want to express something, they kind of come out very emotional, and the man just kind of retracts because they're not able to understand what just happened. So how can we understand this difference in way of psychology of understanding of both the genders?
Well, that could be answered in two different contexts. There's the context of the close relationship of a marriage or a partnership, and then there's the context of living in an ashram where there's men's ashram and women's ashrams. And maybe we could start in that context because that's where we are. And in the context of the ashram, individuals move into the ashram for the primary purpose of getting spiritual knowledge and advancing in spiritual life. And a part of the ashram context is that the residents of the ashram, they observe strict celibacy. And to facilitate that, there is separation of the genders. The men have one ashram, the women have another. And that separation requires a certain type of attitude or set of values for that circumstance to facilitate them being, each gender being in the ashram and having things work in a way that works for both. And so for men who move in ashram, their challenge is sometimes that they, not just they, but everyone in this material world has this attraction for the opposite sex. That's part of the divine arrangement of Krishna, that there's attraction between male and female for the purpose of family life and procreation. So that's a natural part of the Lord's creation. And even in the spiritual world, there are husband and wife who live together. So there's some kind of bond there. In the brahmachari ashram, the men, they're trying to put aside that sense of attraction so they can concentrate on spiritual life. And because of conditioning, actually Prabhupada one time he said it's not surprising that one becomes bewildered by the opposite sex because one has been in the material world since time immemorial and conditioned by those kinds of attractions. So to try to separate oneself from those attractions, that's a big step for both genders to do that. So from the male side, they try to remove themselves from that attraction by having certain boundaries. So women chant on one side of the temple, men chant on the other. You have separate accommodations. And also in your behaviors, the behavior should be not overly familiar, but at the same time they should be respectful. And that's very important, that there's respectful dealings of about what kind of services you do and exchanges like that. And so one phenomena is for men, sometimes men, especially early in the movement, because early in our movement there was a very big push towards renunciation for even past does, like, it actually created many problems. And one problem that was created in the past and still sometimes in the present, in that attempt to have that consciousness of renunciation. Just like yesterday we were talking about the importance of having emotional intelligence and learning to read our emotions and feelings and try to understand how to process them and respond to the emotions in a way that's going to be beneficial for ourselves and for others. So sometimes in the attempt from the male side to come to that consciousness of renunciation, the men have to deal with that conditioning of attraction, and that involves for them, as we're describing yesterday, these are things that you can't suppress, but you have to process. And what happened in the past, and still sometimes in the future to different degrees, in the present, to some degree, is that when individuals don't properly process those feelings of attraction, the proper processing would be, I have this attraction, I pause, I wait, as we described, I think, why am I saying this, what's the purpose? And I have this feeling of attraction. However, I have this value that I made a commitment to live in this ashram for at least X amount of time, and for that time my focus is going to be on Krishna. So that way you process the emotion. It's there, you haven't suppressed it, but you suppress it, it's there, and then you function with that understanding that that's there, and that's something that's some part of me, and I'm going to park that on the side for this part of my life. So that's processing it. Not processing it and just suppressing emotions doesn't work because they tend to come out in other ways. And some history.
Rudeness.
I don't know if I should repeat some of these.
Maybe not.
Maybe in the past. That, there's a famous verse, I think it was Acharya, where he described how he became a Purnat sannyasi, and he was describing in this one verse that he wrote that when I think of my previous sex life, he said, I spit at the thought. And in the neophyte stage of Krishna consciousness in the beginning, sometimes some men would read that, and because they're trying to suppress their emotions, not process the emotions, they can't think clearly, and somehow that understanding of that verse became
I hate the woman, not
Yeah.
just my thoughts.
yes. So it becomes I spit at the thought of women.
Not I spit at women.
Yeah. Not I spit at the thought of women.
Spit at my thoughts of
Yeah,
being attracted.
So it developed this very negative attitude towards women, which is not what the original intent of that verse and that Acharya was, that he was condemning his own thoughts. And he got transmogrified, is that a word? Something that Kelvin and Hobbes. Transmogrified, warped into this negative attitude towards women. And so that can manifest in our society, that sometimes men can have a negative attitude towards women. And as Uttama was saying, that it can manifest as harshness.
So is that coming from your lower self or your higher self?
Lower self.
And whose problem is that? Your own.
And so that's something that's important to realize. That's a challenge for everyone, because
We're conditioned.
someone came to see Prabhupada once and said, I have no sex desire. And Prabhupada said something, are you crazy?
He said, why are you, a stone?
So everyone in this world has those desires, and they have to be somehow processed and managed. And processing them properly, then one can be peaceful in their ashram, one can be civil in all the relationships. And it's harder sometimes in close relationships, like we might go in Sankirtan and be very polite with the ladies there, but in a closer atmosphere, that edge can come out, that negative edge. And that's something very important to be aware of if we fall into those kinds of states of consciousness, because to a greater or lesser degree, it can become a Vaishnava offense, because, once you call Patura to show you offer respect to all the Vaishnavas. And
And the Matajis. Sorry. The Vaishnavas can go here and the Matajis can go there. Misnomer. Sorry.
So that the negative part can manifest in some very blatant Vaishnava aparad, or it can just manifest in subtle things. But even realizing the subtle tendencies of those negative attitudes and trying to be able to recognize them and learn not to respond from those kind of negative attitudes can very much help improve our spiritual life. And from the opposite side also, for the women, it's important for them to realize that that's something that the men they're trying to process that, and it's not an easy thing. And for women, it's different. As Damayanti was saying, women tend to be more emotional, and they need that kind of emotional connection. That's very important for women to have an avenue for emotional connection. For men who are trying to observe that brahmachari lifestyle, for them to enter into that emotional realm of a woman, that would be crossing a line, because
It makes connection.
it makes us a connection, an emotional connection, which is a very important part of the union between a man and a woman, is that emotional connection. So the challenge from the male side is to be civil, polite, and kind and compassionate without actually entering into the female devotee's emotional world, because that's when the analogy of the fire and butter can manifest. So that division is there. So again, the men need to realize they need to be civil, kind, compassionate, and the ladies need to realize that for men, that emotional connection, that's kind of a boundary for them. So they can be kind and compassionate, but for a brahmacharini to go to a brahmachari looking for empathy would be kind of crossing the line. It's important to understand those boundaries. And again, in terms of emotional intelligence, we all need empathy. And it's like the brahmacharis, they need empathy and understanding too. That's why Rupa Goswami, he recommended to reveal your mind in confidence and hear in confidence, because you can have deep conversations with someone you trust about the internal challenges you're facing, how you're dealing with those kinds of attractions. And women need that also very much in your ashram, to have that ability to be able to reveal your mind, feel understood. That's very important for women.
So can I ask you to clarify a little bit more what you were saying about sometimes the ladies come with the feelings? What were you saying there?
So in a team setting,
Mm-hmm.
when men and women are working together in a
Mhm.
team, let's say there's some decision that we need to make, or there's some challenges that has come up. So it's sometimes becomes harder for men and women to understand each other's perspective, because maybe women is also thinking from a very, okay, this can go wrong, okay, so you need to protect from here, here, and here. And men may think, like, why are you considering all the worst possible options? Like, you can see this is going to work out, this straightforward. So
Why are you worried?
yes. So that kind of, sometimes women can minimize their ambition, or then sometimes men minimizes the protective side of, supportive side of women. So how can that in that, how should we work it out doing that? I'm not sure what I mean.
Well, I can understand what you're saying, because I'm the kind of person,
That's him, not
I'm the kind of person, if we went to the river for a walk, I can immediately think of 10 ways we could drown anyway, within the next half hour. And I actually, there's a gentleman who was living in a community. He runs a multi-million-dollar business working on cruise ships. They do refits, putting new windows in, so they have to organize everything. I think that changed all the windows on a huge cruise ship in like 2 weeks. So everything
in
had-
Antarctica, or something like that. It's like on site.
on site, different places. He has a crew of 5 people. Their only job is to try to think, what could possibly go wrong here, and what remedial measures do we have to have in place,
I
planned?
told him he should apply for that.
Yeah, I thought that would be my dream job. Because things do happen, and if you're a little prepared down the line, then
What I hear you saying, though, is sometimes we think of the people side and the feelings of other people and how those things could go wrong. And, that's a real plus by having, 2 gender teams, is that you get to think of the logical side and how it hits people. And so I think that's a strength. And just because one person thinks one way doesn't mean that the other side doesn't need to be looked at too. So I would say that we don't want to tune out what the other person's saying. So especially for ladies, it's quite hurtful for us when you disregard our feelings as just being, like, why do you even think of feelings? We're just doing stuff. It's because those feelings lead to other things and more complications. Like, it's the other side that does need to be looked at. And so when you don't consider that, it can make us a little bit fearful of it's not going to be a good atmosphere. Like, if I was to ask all you guys, when's the last time you were scared? You'd probably really have to think. If I was to ask this side, it was probably yesterday. Like, there's no way we're walking down a dark street at night and we're not afraid. You just go, oh, it's Rosedale, no problem. So we do have more inbuilt fear. And so it's not like it's something made up in the head. 1 in 4 women have been raped. 1 in 4. That's a lot. We don't have the strength you have. So it can be a little bit fearful being around men. Not even just physically, but even just, I'll be considered nothing, insignificant, disregarded. To be a person and to be disregarded. Like, I was just talking to someone, and she went to a hospital in India. She had to take her husband, and she's a white lady there, and they're all devotees. No one would look at her or say one word to her. She says, I'm the one who's going to give the medication. They'll talk to the taxi driver, the this or that. They said they would not look at me. They would not say one word to me. And they're all devotees. She said, how do you think I feel? Like I'm not even existing. And here I'm the person who has to, help the other. So she said, I get it's cultural, but I mean, we're devotees. We know we're all spirit souls. Like, that's just inhumane. It's not a gender difference that I'm being, this is a woman, I shouldn't talk to her. Yeah, you shouldn't be friendly with her, but my goodness, this is your husband, here's the medication, here's what you do. We can be, it's like a pass the salt situation, pass the medicine, pass the whatever. So those things don't show that the premise, that we're all spirit souls, right? And so those things, while you feel completely invalidated, it's also a little bit fearful. Like, what if I need something? Would I even get care here,
So it's
we
even
switch the
yeah.
cultural things so that they function. It's like the adaptive child. What worked in one situation becomes malfunctional in another. So we don't want to get the normal strictures that keep us both safe and in our good positions to go to an abnormal state where they're causing harm to both genders probably.
Mhm.
Because while you're causing the harm to the woman, you're causing harm to yourself because you're getting weird. You know, it's like messing up your minds.
And so for women, that fear of being disregarded, unprotected, or isolated, that's like the greatest fears for women. And men, as I was going to say, we're not fearful to go for a walk in the street, so that our primary fear isn't that fear of isolation or disregard. Often for men, the primary fear is the fear of inadequacy, feeling inadequate, incompetent, or and how that can manifest, say, in these kind of interactions, that you might bring up some idea in a meeting, and someone might say, well, that's really not going to work because of X, Y, Z. So for some men that can be very triggering, because I had this great idea and I bring it up, and then it seems like someone's shooting it down. So for men, it's very common for men to have this fear of inadequacy. And sometimes actually it's quite common in close male-female relationships, marriage or partnerships, that they tend to trigger each other's fears. If the women criticize the men, they feel inadequate. The man withdraws, he won't talk to his wife, she feels isolated. So they're both feeling pain, but for different reasons. So if we can be aware of each other's fears, and especially in a situation like a meeting, like if you have to bring up something that's maybe against a proposal some man's saying.
First, you want to validate some part of it and say, and I was wondering, not but.
Yeah,
Right.
then possibly this could happen, and what preparation could we make in that event or something? So it makes it easier to hear if you present it as not presenting like obstacles, but presenting extra ways we can succeed if X, Y, Z happens.
So we do need to be, I think both genders need to do it. When you're especially when you're in meetings, you want to recognize and, I can't think of the word, validate the other person's contribution and then state yours. Because if we just state ours, it almost automatically invalidates the other person's because we have another side. And you're not meaning that, it's just you didn't take the time to do that. And for ladies, we just brainstorm, we go on and on and on. We don't get that, ooh, they just got crushed. Because they're more sensitive. Well, gee, I was trying hard and they didn't really appreciate it, and I'm doing my best, and wow, So and so then if you go, oh, that's just feelings, then we feel isolated and invalidated, and it's going back and forth. So for ladies, we wouldn't think that would hurt you. We wouldn't even get that. Just like you wouldn't get that, invalidating our feelings would bug us. So it's kind of what you're bringing up, how do you think differently? And what's your triggers?
Yes. I have a question. Sorry, can you give an example of the sentence you said? First, we have to validate them and then say our point.
Well, see, if you use but, it negates it. So, that was a really good idea about getting zip ties to put all the chairs together off the others so they don't get walked off, right? And I was also thinking about another complication would be, and then you bring up yours.
Sometimes people need some quiet place to sit, and there's no quiet place to sit. Also introverts, right? Need some pliers to cut the chairs off.
But it's one of those words that we should try to eliminate. We don't realize that it just discredits everything that was said before that. But we do it automatically.
Not exactly an acronym, but there's an expression, don't put your butt in someone else's face.
Because it does kind of invalidate them, Subhadra.
How much role expectation expectations have in interaction. Like in the ashram, personally, me, sometimes I expect, I have this, I don't know, a problem or a conditioning of expecting a lot from the opposite gender also, and also from the same gender. So how much we should expect, and where should we draw a line?
Well, they say that expectations are just a disappointment waiting to happen.
I used to work with this, in this company, and the owner, we had quite a humorous relationship, it was a lot of fun. And I was doing some big project once, he said, I'm gonna come right out and help you. And he never showed up the whole day, and he came out later and said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And I said, Colin, you never disappoint me. I keep my expectations really low. Sorry.
Sounds rude.
I was joking, man. Work hours really heavy.
So it's very common for women to have expectations, like, especially when you're married. If you love me, you'd know. Why do I have to tell you? Duh. You think they're mystic yogis? They know everything you're thinking? It's not quite like that. It's better to just state clearly and simply what you need.
And
Because
appreciate-
expectations, they're read differently. They don't know what your expectation. How do they know what your expectation is?
And when your expectations are met, it's very helpful and important to express appreciation. That, thanks for, doing that. It meant a lot to me.
Like you just, like when you serve the cake, make sure you put it with the bottom side down. You just have an expectation that they're going to know not to go like this, but almost every man serves it with the icing upside down. I don't know why. But you just have to explain what you need. I don't know, I just noticed that at our temple, if the server's a man, you get your icing upside down because you just go like this, right?
So, as she asked, should we have no expectations? Sometimes when I think of this, like I have no expectations from other people, then I tend to neglect them. Like, I know he or she doesn't do nothing, so no expectations also sometimes. So should we? I had this idea of testing. Okay, I should test my expectations.
You should state your expectations.
Yeah, because we all have needs in our service, needs in our related to who we are as individual souls. So we have those needs, and that's what I was saying. Like we need to express what we need, so the other party can understand, what we need in that situation, what's helpful to us, and also when we make a request for something that we need, we have to understand a request. It's a request. It's not a demand, because actually we're performing bhakti yoga, and it's voluntary loving service. So it's important to express our needs as a request.
Not a demand. And then the other person can, if there's some part of it they can't do, I could do this, but not that. Then they can respond. Like you make your request. If you just have an expectation, you don't know how it's gonna. You don't know if they even know what they're supposed to do. You just expect that they automatically would, but maybe they don't. But when you make the request, then the other person can say, oh, sure, I can do this part of it, but that part I already have a commitment for this, I couldn't do that, so I can do this, and then you know. Otherwise you're gonna wonder why they only do half of it, or something.
So, in this material world, from when we get our consciousness about what is society and everything, this life runs on expectations and desires. Like if you go outside, so when you are working, you expect something, otherwise you can't run your life. So without doing anything, okay. With our parents we expect something, with our friends we expect something. That's quite natural. With our body, that's how we
express or expect.
Expectations, we have expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And day to day, in life, we habituated that. So when it's come to partner or anyone, how how can we keep these low expectations? Like,
Maybe you don't have to keep it low, but you want to, in terms of like emotional intelligence we were talking about, we have these expectations may filter up into our consciousness, and we might want to be thoughtful and see, well, how realistic is this, and to what degree is it realistic? And measure it like that, and then it's important, especially in close relationships, to discuss those realistic expectations and see how our partner or associates can work with that or accommodate that. But it's important to have realistic expectations.
And to not just assume that they automatically know what it is. You may have to actually ask. Now,
Serious question.
Sorry, I thought you were that next.
it's okay.
No, please.
Well, I was just going to say that there are like broad expectations, and especially for ladies in close relationships, we have the expectation that you're going to be there when we need it. We may have to request, okay, I need you to come with this, but if you just like brush it off as not important, that's lots of deposits going out of your account. So in close relationships, we do expect that the other person's going to be there when for those difficult things that we really need it. At the same time, we can ask for it, but you better find a way to do it, right? So you know exactly. I was just going to say that. You had a question?
First of all, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of this knowledge, not just from today, from yesterday as well. It was much needed. Answered prayers. Thank you. So my question is, right now, I'm trying to understand this phase that I'm going through. So when I think about relationships, marriage really excites me. I like having a family and get married at some point. But then all I have seen is that people you met, they are just mirrors. Mirrors of your wounds, or of, let's say, even just another lesson, let's call it that. And then you see in Vedas or some pastimes that like whenever Krishna wanted to test a devotee, there was a story about this person who was like, yes, I'm going to come back to you, and the minute he left, saw a lady, got married, and came back to Krishna, and Krishna was like, where were you in this half an hour? And his whole life was passing by. So like, where is the line to say it could be nice to have a nice, like a happy marriage, or we came to this life to just let go of all of that and become one with Krishna, or marriage is Maya, if that makes sense.
Marriage is not Maya, because Krishna created this system. So it's a natural system. Varnashram, it's like a natural system. That was grahastas and vanaprastha. If there was no grahastas, nobody would be here. So it's a natural system. And I think it becomes difficult when we think, I'm going to have a healthy, happy relationship. Whereas we should be thinking, I'm going to work at having a healthy, happy relationship. So just like people, they work at getting a degree, you work at getting physically fit. There's so many things in our life we realize we need to work at and put effort in. Unfortunately, we tend to think that marriage is going to be like the fairy tale paradigm. I'm just going to meet the princess, or the prince is going to meet, and they're just going to live happily ever after and ride off in a chariot to some beautiful castle. And the real story is the prince meets the prince, and they start doing the hard work to live happily ever after. And so marriage is work, and being single is work. Being a brahmachari is a lot of work. Being a single woman is a lot of work. Whatever situation we are in life, we can become happy and satisfied, but there's a certain amount of effort we have to put into that to develop those kind of meaningful relationships. And so it requires work, and if you do the work, it can be satisfying and fulfilling. It's not that there's not going to be difficulties, but you'll be able to work through them. But it becomes problematic when we think that it's just going to happen. It'd be a fairy tale. So we have to have a realistic, that's a good example of a realistic expectation as opposed to an idealistic expectation.
So you were mentioning that sometimes the people you meet just seem like mirrors, in that it shows up, it reflects the things inside of you that are troublesome and need working on?
Yes.
And so that may be an arrangement to have you look at those things. Because just like in the seminar yesterday, the things that we're triggered by is like some conditioning. And so it's helpful when that conditioning gets mirrored or spotlighted. So we can see, oh, okay, well, that's just the conditioning, you know. I'm not bound by that. I'm a totally different person than whoever treated me like that thought I was, or, you know, or, you know. So that's something that we have to look at and see, you know, how can I give myself the validation and the help to become like a whole happy person and to do the hard things. So maybe that part that's coming out is something that is hard for you to do, but now that you're an adult, you can learn how to do it, and you can figure out how to do it in a healthy way. We don't have to just respond in the unhealthy way. So that mirroring may bring out that unhealthy response. And you can realize, well, now I'm older, I don't have to respond in that way. I can take charge and do it in a better way. And in that way, you will attract in your life people who could also help you to respond in a positive way, because you already learned your lesson. Sometimes when we haven't learned our lesson, Krishna's is giving us more opportunities to learn our lesson. And once we've learned the lesson, you graduated and you don't have to do that test again. So that's kind of impetus. It's not like you're stuck with that forever. Once you learn the lesson, then Krishna doesn't give you that stuff anymore, because you learned it. And I've had many people say, it's miraculously, their situations change. You know, that troublesome, abusive person's just gone from their life, because I learned how to do it.
I think a key for couples looking to get married,
Singles looking to
for singles looking to get married, I was referring to a couple who decide to get married and then, anyway, so anyone looking to get married should be seriously looking at how to improve themselves in their life, and also look for someone who similarly wants to improve themselves in their life, and then together you can both improve yourselves and work on improving your relationship through your relationship, and have that growth mentality, growth set mentality. That's very important for being peaceful in life.
You answered my second question in my head. Thank you.
If we don't have that mentality, then the problems come and we think, this is the wrong person.
Thank you.
So there are some things that we all have that we need to work on, but there are some personality traits also. They may not be problems, they might just be our flavors, for the lack of a better
Yeah, sure, just do different.
So when dealing with people, we're trying to build relationships. How do you draw a line between how much you're trying to improve yourself for other people, or change you, or accommodate, make changes in your nature to accommodate some other person? Because at times you may feel like you're being just changed. Or how do you know if you're being forced to improve?
have you ever heard something called the Serenity Prayer? It's a very interesting prayer. It goes something, well, dear Lord, please help me understand the things that I can change about myself. Please help me understand the things I cannot change. Like you were saying, some things are just who we are. And please grant me the wisdom to see the difference between the two. And that's very true in relationships. Like, in a close relationship, we might want our partner, spouse, to change on something, but that just might be who they are. So they have to figure that out, we have to figure that out, and we both have to realize that we have to develop that wisdom, again, to see the difference between the two, and that, that's something that I think it's just a matter of working at it, trying to find out what works for you, what works.
So when you're in a setting like workplace or like ashrams, not everybody's personality is like yours. And I think that we need to be careful if we're in some kind of management that we don't force everybody to do everything like we do it, because it's just not that person's personality. So we do need to honor those personality differences. At the same time, some personalities will have behaviors that aren't so functional, and we can improve those behaviors within our personality type, right? So when to see that it's just the person's personality and when it's the behavior that could be improved. And so I see that in institutions, we tend to want people to be all the same type of person because it's really easy to manage. So if you want to keep like a healthy functioning BA and temple, you want to be able to accommodate and validate other people's personalities. Otherwise, we become a cult.
And that expectation that everyone should just be like me, it's a bit like impersonalism.
It's also pretty self-centered.
When we moved in the temple in 1971, I'll admit I was really pretty, I'll use the word contaminated by impersonal philosophy. I just thought it was going to be this homogeneous, everyone's just going to be all the same. And
Om Shanti
what
Shanti.
it was like a rude awakening for me. That, wow, these people are all so different. Like,
I've never met such a variety of people since I've come to ISKCON. Like, you probably all say, it's just such a variety of people. You wouldn't hang out with them because they're not your personality, right? But you learn a lot, and it's kind of flavorful. And we're not going to get close with everybody because we do have different personality types. And while we respect it and honor it, and we don't want to change the person, we are. Some people we're just going to get along with better than others, and that's the way it is.
first morning in the temple, I go downstairs. He's still very eccentric. But he's sitting down on the basement floor with his hands behind his back, a plate of prasadam in front of him, and he's leaning over with his face in the plate of prasadam, eating. Doing like
He's thinking he's
Chaturmasya.
observing Chaturmasya, that he only eats
once a day,
not with his hands. Is it
not
only,
with your hands, sitting cross-legged with your face on the plate.
That's something he just thought that's what the Vedas said. I don't know how you're supposed to do it. I mean, I guess maybe.
That is the thing, but I just remember seeing that, and I just thought, I like this place. This is weird, I'm not gonna ask about it.
Subhadra.
I just want you to tell, there's a difference between how women are and how men are. Like women are emotional, how men are, just to understand them while dealing with them.
So you know how you are, you want to know how they are.
Yes. But then I think that the way I am, they are also the same. So I
Right.
think that I different. Just need to know a little bit.
Men are emotive, we are emotional. Men have been culturally taught to kind of suppress their emotions, which is problematic. I think a lot of men are starting to realize that they do need to develop that emotional side, and it's kind of a learning process for us. It's not always easy. So it's important, if you're developing a close relationship with someone at a certain point, to be aware of that.
But she's just talking about general.
In general, well, again, we're talking in the realm of ashram, so I think in terms of expecting any kind of an emotional reciprocation, that's maybe unrealistic expectation, even maybe a little unhealthy, like in ashram. Same time, there needs to be friendship and respect in that. But being aware, I think one important thing for ladies to be aware of in the ashram is that it is, again, this primary pain for the women was the fear of isolation, and for men it's inadequacy. So understanding that, it should give ladies a realization that it's very important to say things to men, not as criticisms, complaints, but rather as requests. That you have something that needs to be done, or you have some need that they can help with. And if also you can say that, well, that would assist me greatly by making my life a lot easier, or whatever. So it makes them see how they can assist you. It makes men feel they can be successful in rendering you some service. Whereas if you complain, well, you never do this, you're just telling them they failed, and that triggers their sense of inadequacy.
So I have a little, you done?
Go ahead.
I have a little list here. Now, maybe some of them would be more for marriage, and maybe it's in general, so you can pick that. So if you want to like trigger a guy, you exclude him from important decisions. You just make all the decisions. You correct what he says. You question his judgment. Are you guys getting triggered? I give unsolicited advice. I hit some targets. I dismiss his opinion. I imply inadequacy. I make unrealistic demands of his time and energy. I overreact. I ignore his desires. I focus on what I didn't get. I withhold praise. Now, it's not like you have to be super praisy, but at least you can say, oh, thanks, that was a good, you know. It's not. Okay, I use a harsh voice. I don't know why men think they can use it, but they can't take it. Maybe from men, but not from a lady.
The whole thing is
I know you guys talk to each other harshly, but it doesn't work if a lady does it to you, does it?
yes.
No. I can be abrupt, I spring it on immediately. Like, men can't do things instantly. They need a little time, right? And don't give them 5 things at once. One, and when they're done that one, the next one, right? I don't think you guys multitask too good, right? No. I condescend, like, you know. I criticize his personality. I disrespect his work. I show little or no interest in his interests. Well, I mean, it's not like you're going to be super interested, but you're not going to put it down, right? I criticize his friends, his family. Okay. I interpret, psychoanalyze, or diagnose him. I make comparisons to other men. I focus on my unhappiness. I put, okay, this is what I wouldn't put, okay, maybe the other ones aren't so for this kind of thing, but, it says I rob them of the opportunity to help. So, like, sometimes they just offer to help something. No, I can do it, you know, I'm a liberated woman, right? But they're just offering. Okay, you guys want to hear your?
Yes.
Ignore her. just like my friend was saying, it's just completely ignored in the hospital, right? I mean, it's, whew. Okay, I tell her what to do, right? Instead of ask. Why are you guys laughing? Duh. Okay. I can be short with my answers, whatever. I tune out her feelings, so it's not like you gotta get so emotional because you're, but still, you can't just, that's dumb, you know, like, okay. I stonewall or give her the rude shoulder, right? I take her for granted. I tell her to stop worrying. That's a no-no. I tell her she's making too much of it. I tell her to get over it. I tell her she talks too much. Don't do that to Subhadra. I criticize her family. I withdraw or shut down. I yell or get angry. Ooh, no. Because you have more power, so it's really scary for us. I pout or sulk. That's what he does, right? I threaten to quit. Well, I just won't bother, right? It's like, you know, as soon as they say something that doesn't go right, well, get someone else to do it. I don't want it, right? What else? Let me see. I dismiss her ideas. The other one was I buy a sports car, but I don't think that's relevant. He's got his list there he's reading from.
In a lot of questions you said that you should ask other person. For example, expectation also you said state your expectation. So what if the person is not ready to talk? I'm talking about myself.
He's not really what?
Not ready to talk. Like,
Yeah.
Not you said state your expectations and like.
So if the expectation is you should talk, like the expectation, like if you're on prasadam duty, you know, I just assume you're gonna know you're supposed to put it here, there, in the next place. The expectation was that can you bring them, put them here, make sure the dishes are there. That's what I'm
Well,
talking
you said
about.
he's not ready to talk.
So what do you mean? But that's what I mean. What kind of expectation about talking?
So again, I repeat my question.
Okay.
Like if you have some disappointment
Mm.
or if you have some hard feelings or you have some expectations, you said okay, I have something for him. You ask him or you tell him that I'm feeling this or this is.
So you're talking about after disappointment and you wish something was differently. That's what you're talking about. A disappointed expectation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're not ready to say it, is that what you're saying?
I'm not ready to say it.
Yeah.
What does it shows that? Is that low self-esteem? Is that what it is? Like, if I'm not ready to talk.
Well, it could be,
Could be you're not ready.
and it could be maybe you just want to step back and think about it so you can say it clearly. And, or if you're, we were talking about escalation yesterday, you know, if you feel escalated, it's definitely not a good time. And if you feel emotionally aroused or you're getting angry, that's definitely not a good time to express your expectations if you're emotionally hyper aroused, because whatever comes out of your mouth is not going to be constructive. So you want to be A, in a good state of mind, and B, you want to be clear about what you're going to say. So it might be good to step back and do it. Sometimes there might be a fear that it might not be received well. I don't know if that's possible. You know, if you have that kind of fear, it can be helpful to know that, well, if you make a request, you know, they're an individual with their independence and they may say yes or no, so we have to be prepared. They may say no. That's a possibility we have to accept. And it may be something that you can negotiate when you express those expectations, and sometimes people are afraid to bring up their expectations or needs in close relationships because it might become a conflict. And introverts don't like conflict, so if you're introverted, you're probably going to want to not express it then. If people in close relationships or even organizations can learn a conflict resolution style, it's like having a game plan for how to bring something up that's maybe a little controversial or maybe a little conflict. There are methods you can bring things up in which you can feel confident that you can discuss the issue or your need or their need in a way that's constructive and non-confrontational. Sometimes that's our fear, is that it's going to become confrontational. So I don't know exactly what your fear or hesitation is, but
So what I was picking up is that something didn't really go well, and it probably needs to be talked about, but you're not quite ready yet. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is that in all relationships, there's always going to be disharmony. And that's normal. What we don't understand is how to repair. And it's the repair that makes all the difference in how well you get along. So while it's not comfortable, it's really advantageous to learn how to repair. And so repair is usually a little bit of a, I realized our interaction didn't go well, and, I'd really like to talk about it, and I acknowledge that, I did this, that, and the next thing, and how did it go for you? And just hear the other person. And then hopefully they'll ask us, how did it go for you? And, well, the reason I responded like this was because of that and this, and then they get to understand each other. So it's mostly just taking the time to actually understand what the other person was going through and why they responded the way they went through. It's not so much what happened, because usually it's going sour because of the nature of the interaction, not the thing that happened, is usually what the discomfort's about. So that's where you want to start, is how did our interaction go off? And it could be just as simple as, they thought they were ignored, but you actually didn't hear them. You had an earbud in one, whatever. You don't know what. So very often when we want to express what went on for us, it's good to say, so the story that I'm making up about what went on, because it gives the other person, okay, this is just what I made up. I don't know how it actually was, but this
maybe
is what
true,
I
maybe
made
true.
up. And that caused me to feel like this. So just letting you kind of know, and what I would need is, for you to send me a message next time, or whatever it is you need. Does that kind of answer your question, or is there a part 2 or part 3 or part 5 or part?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, yeah. I would also encourage you not to wait too long. I know that I'm the kind of person that I don't know how to bring it up, and I'm a little bit scared of interaction, so I won't, and then I think about it later, and then time goes on, and I go, it's so late, and I didn't bring it up, and then you can have this kind of weird feeling going between the two of you, even though you're, interacting and you're both in the ashram, but you didn't repair that thing. So much as it may be against your nature, and it may be kind of difficult, and we're afraid of offending the other person, but 9 times out of 10, they're feeling the same way, and they're just happy you're bringing it up. And I would say try to repair sooner than later. You need time to sort it out so you know what you're feeling and what you're thinking, but not too long. Somebody has something over here? I'll go to her and then you.
I really like the point where you mentioned that in the ashram everybody has different personalities, and we need to accommodate and learn and balance each other's to understand each other's personalities. That's one point. It's different from my question, but I wanted to appreciate that point. Sometimes we ourselves, or sometimes we meet people like this who have this idea of perfection in their life, that too much high expectations from other person to the point where they find themselves hard to make friends, find themselves hard to get into marriage, or sometimes they find themselves just spending some time with people and then finding out about them, something about them, and then just
See
negating.
one thing and not perfect, so,
Yeah, like
Somebody wrote a book, Mr. Good Enough.
so that kind of like
Some perfectionist lady who was like looking for the perfect partner, right? And she
Yeah.
realizes her friends, yeah, they complain about the husband now and then, but basically they're happy and they got the this and the that, and so he was Mr. Good Enough, you know?
yes. So so then they kind of just leave friendships at the middle, and this like sense of just leaving a lot of times, and then they also struggle with it because they end up lonely. But from their mind, they just, or I can also say that sometimes me or they cannot just get this idea out of their mind that this perfect person or
Doesn't
this
exist.
perfect friendship. So what is the psychology like? How should we understand this? Is it coming from some childhood trauma, or what is it?
Probably.
You know, we talked
Everything
about
does.
talked about the one-up, a bit grandiose, that one result of that is you think you're always right. So you might think your expectations are always right. And that kind of person needs to realize, well, so do I want to be always right, or do I want to be in a relationship?
Or have relationships,
Yeah,
period,
period,
friends,
yeah.
and, you know. So I think he's next. Did we finish?
I don't think he's asked a question yet.
Okay, I was just going in the order of the
Okay.
hands, but.
Yeah.
You got bumped up because you didn't ask a question? He didn't either.
Hare Krishna. So my question is, what was the mindset of man in 70s compared to today in general and in Krishna consciousness?
The mindset of man?
Well, in general, it was completely opposite to in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
In the 70s, it was like free mingling. Outside. Inside? If a woman walked down the hall and you're a brahmachari, you would just like flap yourself against the wall. You wanted the ladies to wear their saris, so they came down here. Like they have to fix your problem for you, you know, like, too much emphasis on renunciation in the wrong sense. And you know, we actually joined on the West Coast, and even when you read like Prabhupada Limrita and stuff, you'll see that the East Coast devotees were kind of like criticizing the West Coast devotees. They were too like loose and didn't follow the rules and regulations. So we kind of came from that side. Our temple president had 5 kids, and it wasn't that structured for us. But I know over on this side of Canada, it was quite a bit different. And
In the Vancouver Temple, it was more like a family atmosphere. I think even amongst the brahmacharis and the brahmachari. One of my godbrothers, Vijaytam, he's always reading, and if he'd be reading, it's the Matajis in the kitchen, maybe one other devotee. He'd go in and just read, even though there's a Mataji there.
he just stands
Just
reading from
reads
the book. He's
Krishna.
not even looking at them.
Yeah.
He's just looking at the book. Yeah. So, I think the wrong vision of renunciation was that mixing up that, you know, verse about I spit at my own negative thoughts, and we turned it to like it's the other person that's the problem. It's just immaturity. And, you know, there are other religions that are kind of immature about those kind of things too. And if you come from one of those other religions and you switch over to Krishna consciousness, you do kind of bring some of that with you. So, it's just like when you first join Krishna consciousness, we do start at the beginning of the Kanishta platform where it's like me and God, and all the devotees don't really matter. You know, so we're not working on our relationships with other people. It's just like, this is my goal, to become a pure devotee, and you know, everybody else get out of my way, you know? So, a lot of it is just like kind of neophyte mentality. And so anybody that joins sometimes will start there, and you'll see that they'll might be a little more exclusive of other people because of that Kanishta mentality. They're just focusing on their relationship with Krishna. So that's why we need mature association, so we can
Yeah.
get through that faster. And
That was a challenge early in the movement, 60s and 70s.
we had no older people.
Yeah, the senior devotee was he joined maybe 2 years before you. That was a senior devotee.
And, you know, we were 20 and he was 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So we didn't have grandparents in the Krishna consciousness movement.
unfortunately, though, when you go to temples, sometimes the older devotees have moved on and they have their own services and they run their own kind of programs, and you're still left with the new people in the temple. And so sometimes some temples can have quite a Kanishta attitude. Here you're kind of lucky you have like, you know, older people around and this and that, and they guide you, but sometimes you'll see, you go to temples and it's still very, you know, it's just the natural stages, and you need that help to go through them in a balanced way and not misunderstand what renunciation is. Renunciation is to give up things which are unfavorable and to accept things which are favorable. So, you know, the Prabhu was talking this morning about how he was saying he understands that even though he's older, it doesn't mean he has to take sannyas. But his attitude in a relationship is to have detachment. Now, even detachment requires a lot of maturity to understand that correctly. Detachment could mean, you know, I don't speak civilly, I don't answer my wife, I don't, you know, like I'm detached, you know. It doesn't mean that. It means that we understand that Krishna has some arrangement. And it's like you have kids, you know, you bring them up the best you can, then they choose to follow Krishna consciousness or they don't. You have to become detached because it's not under our control. So that's the kind of attachment you have to have, that it's just, you know, see what's Krishna's plan, and it doesn't always have to be your way. It's not that we're cold. It doesn't imply coldness. It implies seeing that Krishna has some plan. That's what detachment is. It's not my plan. It's Krishna's plan. I think he's cute, right?
Yes. So my question is different, but I want to appreciate that you brought up this point of how there's a false renunciation mentality in ISKCON. It was there before, and somehow it's still there in some temples where they don't have guidance of elder devotees. I was there in Yatra in India a couple of weeks before, and so some ladies, they sang Tulsi Aarti, and there was a time to give feedback at the end of Yatra, like last day. There was one more day left, a day before the last day. So a brahmachari from some part of the world came and said it was very disturbing for them to listen to a Mataji singing Tulsi Aarti. I was like, what? What is that? Like, what should they do? Like, not exist or what? So that's what you're talking about, you know, that they're trying to see the problem outside rather than working on themselves. So I was disturbed by that statement of his.
There was
A letter.
a letter. Actually, our president had this letter, like she was saying we were hostile, so it was very balanced in Vancouver, and somehow our temple president had a letter on file he kept in the office. And one of the brahmacharis, one day he went to the temple president and said, well, can the women chant their japa in the lobby? That's a huge temple, maybe,
Same size as yours, you know.
yeah, and there's a little lobby that's maybe the size of this room. And he said, well, can you please have the women chant in the lobby and the men chant in the temple room? So temple president went, he pulled out this letter where someone had asked Prabhupada the same question that some brahmacharis wrote and said, Prabhupada, we're getting disturbed by the women chanting in the temple. And Prabhupada wrote back this reply, if the men are agitated by the women chanting in the temple, then they should go chant in the forest with the monkeys.
He said, you're gonna go out on Sankirtan and you're gonna see ladies everywhere, and you're selling them books, and the one who's going to offer the flowers to Prabhupada, you're being agitated by. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And now my question is, you were talking about behavior and personality, that we should be accommodating of the personality, but then we should work on behaviors. So there are some rules and regulations in the temples, like everyone has to wake up for Mangalarti. Now, someone may say that I cannot really wake up early.
I'm not a morning person.
Exactly. Or someone may complain that, oh, I cannot really sleep early at night. I cannot really sleep. Now, how should we make them understand that these are rules and this for everyone, it has to be followed. You may not wake up as early as everyone, but you have to wake up for Mangalarti.
Yeah.
Well, like in the ashram, you should have certain standards, and some situations you might even have an agreement that they read first, that if I'm going to stay in the ashram, these are the requirements that I do X, Y, and Z. And so if they agree to that, then after some time, they say I can't, well, you can say, well, you promised you would try and do this. And, like we lived in the temple when we first joined, and yeah, everyone got up, like everyone. It's like everyone was sleeping, and all the men slept in one room, all the ladies slept in one room, and it's
It was just
what everyone
required.
did, yeah, and
I still, to this day, maybe I'm tired, but I'm in the temple, so I think I'm supposed to go to Mangalarti. That's how I was
Yeah.
trained, right? Doesn't matter if I'm tired.
Yeah, I see you every day.
And there was a temple commander, not only you had to get up for Mangal Artik, but even if you went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, you still had to get up for Mangal Artik. Sometimes we go on traveling to Sankirtan, and I remember I took this party out. I actually had a women's party I took out. We got back 1 in the morning, took rest at 1. I got up for Mangal Artik, but then I went to take a nap in the afternoon, and the temple president or the temple commander just got on my case. Nobody sleeps in the day in the temple.
So that's extreme, we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't go to that extreme, like if you slept late
Yeah.
due to some service,
Yeah, yeah.
you get to take some rest, but if you have a normal day, you sleep on time,
Yeah.
you should wake up on time.
You just make it clear before people come, and I would even bring it up a little bit at Ishtagostis. Thank you all for doing that. It makes a difference, because when we all do it, it has an impact. It makes a certain mood. And it's just like, when you have kirtan, how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would only let the serious devotees in, because he wanted at some times a kirtan that was pure. And so it's not that the other people are bad. Then there's times when he goes out on the street and has kirtan, and then everybody can join. But when you have that kind of pure kirtan, you need everybody's consciousness to be focused. So when you have a morning program and everybody's getting up and going, it makes that focused, enlivened mood. And as soon as one person starts sleeping, then the next person does, and then your whole program starts to fall apart. So I think it's a matter of pointing out the benefits more than picking on the faults. and just say like, we need it, otherwise we all wanna do the same, you know, it's like, so it does need to be done nicely, and maybe if a person really isn't well, we do need extra sleep. So that does open the door to, well, I was sick, Prabhu, you know, so you do the best you can. I think it's just to really showcase the mood of when you're all together, and you know, how that creates that atmosphere that makes that spiritual feelings that we really are looking for. And so we need everybody to participate to make that spiritual feeling. Pump the positive side.
Yeah. And that ashram experience, it's so valuable. Like, we live in the temple for, actually lived in the temple separately for a couple of years, and then we had a separate apartment for some time after. But just living close to the temple, living in the temple, it just gives you that opportunity for that immersion. And I think everyone should have that opportunity. Like, some temples have a thing like you'll be a monk for a week or something, and you can come and have that immersion. And it just gives you that, it helps you develop that taste for worshiping the deity and chanting the names. Like, I think that's the greatest fortune that all devotees can have, is to have some kind of immersion in ashram in their life for a period.
And sorry, on those lines, personality and behavior. So, if someone has a certain kind of behavior that is making them not have close friendships with almost all the devotees in the ashram, so how do we navigate or communicate this with that person, that Prabhu? I think something needs to be changed on your side rather than changing something on the other side, or expecting others to change for you. Because if everyone is not having a good relationship with you, there's something wrong with you rather than with them.
I think it's, again, setting boundaries. If somehow someone, their behavior, attitude becomes very unproductive. I have heard that when I started the Chopati temple in Mumbai, they actually set some boundaries, and they did have to ask some people to leave the ashram because they just found their behavior or attitudes was just not conducive to the other devotees' well-being. So sometimes you do have to make those definitive decisions. Not an easy decision, not pleasant to be the one to have to enforce that, but sometimes it can be necessary.
So another part of it is, like, you know, that chart yesterday, the blue one with the 4 quadrants. If you're on the boundary side, you don't have good experiences with relationships, and it just feels much more safe to kind of be yourself and not mix with people. And so one of the things that is required is education on how beneficial relationships can be, and a little bit of practice with beneficial relationships, and to try to encourage the person that, why don't you try it out, because loneliness isn't really so great. I mean, you're used to it, so you're comfortable. However, and I think that you would experience more joy in Krishna consciousness by having more relations, and we really appreciate you, and you know, we feel like we're not getting your association, and we'd like to hear from you. So it's not going to be instantaneous because it's kind of their go-to. So it does require education, and in some cases there's a fair bit of trauma history that really makes it fearful. So sometimes you need to try to find out if there is like too much trauma in the background, and see if you can't find, you know, so there's a couple of therapists around that live in Toronto, and see if they do a pro bono, or, you know, maybe their medical covers it, or I don't know, maybe they need a little help, or you know, because they're probably suffering quite a bit, and it's, you know, not a great feeling, and they might need a little bit of help with it. So part of it is like understanding that it's kind of where to go for safety, and to try to make the interactions feel comfortable, and a little bit education on how it could be beneficial.
Dorothy, do we have an end time that we need to?
It was 11:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have, I mean, we don't have any, do you wanna go, or?
No, I'm just saying that we don't wanna hold them up, and we are actually here until next.
So
it's coming
if we're not
Friday, so-
holding you up, we can keep going, it's just,
Yeah.
okay.
We can have one more session, it's one of the good ones.
Yes, I think it would be better if we ended soon, because
Yeah.
some of us have also requested check-ins, so that.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
taking
yeah.
it, okay.
Okay.
So we'll take one last question.
Yeah.
Okay, last two questions.
One potato, two potato, three potato, four.
He hasn't asked one
Okay.
yet, so he gets to go.
We have been talking about trauma since yesterday and even in the last. I just realized that I had some certain childhood trauma, not really big,
Yeah.
but because of which, if I don't act in a certain way, I just don't feel comfortable. So my major question is, how do you know if you have a trauma? Like, I used to think I don't have any trauma, but it was more like I didn't know I had something. And I believe most of the people, because trauma is kind of a big term for us,
Yeah.
like we don't even know we have something.
And trauma is small and big. Sometimes the person with the trauma is the last person to figure it out, everybody else has figured that out, but you haven't. Just the fact that you've realized it is a big step. And it helps you to see why you respond in the way that you do. And now you need to see whether it's a maladaptive response, and perhaps I need to learn how to do it in a different way. And do I need to set some kind of boundaries to feel safe? So that you can function not according to your trauma responses. You still have to be able to interact in a way that feels safe for you. So it's kind of a combination of the two, and you probably need a little bit of introspection on that. And to just make a boundary of something that really isn't comfortable for you to say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that right now, or that doesn't really work for me.
To be continued.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
I didn't know I had check-ins. I guess we have some check-ins.